Hello, and welcome to the Becoming Mama podcast, where two long lost best friends discuss all things motherhood. I'm your host, Emmy Kissinger, and I'm here with my co host, Samantha Thompson.
Hall?
Oh, God. Oh, God. Okay.
It's okay.
Going well so far.
Leave it in. Hi, everybody. So excited to be here.
Today on the episode, we're going to start with our wins and losses, and then we're going to dive into Twila's birth story, which is such a special story to my heart. It's a story of triumph, a story of redemption, and a story of transformation for me personally. And I think there will be lots of fun wisdom you can pull from it and things you can see yourself in. So I'm hopeful that it will be a fun journey that we go on together. Samantha, why don't you start us out with your wins or losses or whatever you want to share?
Okay. For those of you who don't know, Thompson is my maiden name, and Emmy has known me majority of my life with that last name. So cut her some slack. Is that going to be your loss for the week? I hope that's all. All right. So loss of this week. I want to start on the negative so that we can end on the positive. I had COVID last week, so I think that's probably it. Like, it really took me down. Man, I like forget it's a thing, and then it was bad. I had the weirdest symptoms of like jaw and bless you. I had yeah, so I had jaw, neck, and like back pain, super bad, and I was just dead tired. And it was the same week that I was putting out all the pictures of my journal and day planner and like getting ready to launch Mom Miss, which is just started. So if you're don't know what that
Make
is,
sure
you can
to
check
sign
out
up.
the link. Sign up, check that down below. So I was just so overwhelmed and exhausted, and that really just tried me. But I overcame, and it was great. And then I would say my win of the week is a really simple one. It's Spotify Wrapped Day today. If you haven't seen yet, your Spotify Wrapped is up as of November 29th. And none of my top music was children's music. And the coolest thing, this will like be forever the coolest thing to me. In May, I went to a Blink-182 concert, and the opening opener, so like the very first band, was playing when we got there. And I heard the music, and I was like, oh, I know this song. I was like, how do I know this song? I was like, this is a beauty school dropout song. Why would this be playing? Why would this be playing? And then I sprinted into the stadium, and it was this band, Beauty School Dropout, playing. And I had been listening to them all winter. They were my favorite band at the time. I was like obsessed with them. And they were there playing at the concert. Like I didn't even know. And so on my Spotify Wrapped, they were the number one band I listened to last year. And the peak time I listened to it was in February, which was before the concert. So it was just such a cool like time capsule to be like, yeah, no, I really loved them. And then I got to see them in concert on accident, which is so, I can't explain the joy that I felt in that. Like, you know how like when you have low expectations and then something like even better happens, how happy you feel. It was like that times 1,000. It was so cool. So that made my morning today to see that they were the number one band on my Spotify Wrapped, and that Bug's Life was not there.
Wow. That is a really awesome accomplishment. I'm very proud of you. And I also just think it's so cool to have seen you shift and change and grow as a person, but always hold on to like your love for music and your love for the same kind of music. And also just want to highlight that that is one of the reasons you are so cool and I am not cool at all. It is just such a reminder that like, wow, like you have such a personality. You're such an awesome person. And like, I'm just so much more like, I don't know, different than that.
Okay. Lot to unpack there. Thank you. I appreciate that you think I am cool. I strive to be cool. I just put up a Reels on YouTube the other day. I was like, this is something that makes me feel cool. I don't know if it is cool because I don't know what's cool anymore, but this makes me feel cool. But you have such a personality. We just have different personalities. Like your personality is, we're going on a hype session. Your personality is just like uniquely you, which is what I think makes you so special. It's like I have like cool aspects of me, but a lot of them are like trendy. Like it's cool because like society says they're cool. You're cool because you have no apologies. You are who you are. You believe what you believe. You say what you believe. And those aren't always the most streamlined, or is that what that streamlined?
Like
Not
mainstream.
streamlined. Mainstream. They're not the most mainstream things, but you don't care because you know that you trust it with your gut. And you've always been that way. So I think you are so cool. And I look up to you in so many ways for that. And honestly, I'm so excited to hear Twila's birth story for that reason. So
That
shut
was a
up, you're
really good
cool.
lead in. That was a really good lead into that. And I guess I just wish I could infuse a little bit more of that like on trend, like coolness, you know, that you have. But it's fine. It's always something good to aspire to. Like
Yeah.
we're all just on our own journey, and that's perfect.
Let's be honest, if we were on a coast, I would be way behind the trends. But because we live where we live, I'm.
Oh my gosh, haven't even done this yet. Okay, so I'll start with my loss also. My loss is that on my birthday, I experienced a tachycardia event, which is a rapid heart rate. I'm on the other side of it now. It's the second time it's happened to me. I'm going to see a specialist, a cardiologist, hopefully in the future, not too distant future. It was pretty scary. It was a pretty freaky event, but I'm just sharing it here because I shared about it on social media, and I know that there's a lot of people who will want to hear from my mouth that, like, I'm okay, like, everything is fine. It was really scary. I've had a lot of follow-up questions. If there's anybody who wants to reach out to me because they have questions, feel free. Most of the questions have been like, were you awake during the entire thing? Yes. What did you know it was happening? If your heart is beating at 300 beats per minute, you will be able to tell. I'll
Oh
tell you
my
that.
gosh.
But went to the emergency room, got some medication intravenously. I would love to go into some of the gory details, but I won't. Placed in my body. They actually stopped my heart and reset it for a minute. And so we joking around saying that on my 33rd birthday, I kind of died for a second. But if I did, like, I have been revived and I'm great. I'm fine.
Oh my gosh. So you were onto something in the
The last
Witch in the Woo
podcast, yeah.
podcast. You knew.
Yep,
Yep.
something's been. Well, I've been sensing this for a really long time. And the crazy thing I actually told my sister after the fact was that I actually felt better after it happened because there has been, like, I have, like, experienced some really strange symptoms of, like, I haven't experienced a lot of joy in my body. Like, normal things
Mm.
that I always feel have sort of been dulled for a while.
Mm.
And so after that actually all happened, I felt 100% like myself again. So I don't know.
Weird.
I don't know. I'm sure there's no like cardiology research articles that are like person experiences joy.
Yeah. So weird.
So I don't know. And then my win Christmas decorating is well underway. We got our Christmas tree on Thanksgiving and
Mm.
put it all up. Super fun. We have so many traditions. We keep a big list. And our elf always comes early. So elf is here. He came after Thanksgiving. And the fun is underway. So that's really exciting.
What are some of your traditions? Like what's one of
Well,
your special traditions?
the one that comes to mind first is the bow game. And this is something I learned from, at one point, I purchased like this little get moving holiday curriculum, like ways to help your kids move during the holidays.
Hmm.
And what you do is you have little Christmas bows that you can buy at any big box store. And one person hides them, and the rest of the family goes in the bedroom, shuts the door, and then we turn off all the lights, and the kids have flashlights, and they have to go around and find the sparkly bows around the house. We have to find them all, and then we play again. So it's a really just fun game. The kids always look forward to playing it around the holidays, and it's just exciting. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things. We also do some gingerbread houses. The kids love cookie decorating. We always do that. Um, yeah. So, what about you? Holiday traditions?
We don't really have a lot right now, aside from like going to my parents' house on Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, which I think will probably change over time. Teddy's just still young enough where like everything around here is a little chaotic. It's like we do this one day, but I'm looking forward to being able to do more of that. Like we just wrote our first list to Santa, which was super fun, and
Aww.
he like dictated all of it, and so I wrote it exactly how he said it. So it's like he said, "I want big dinosaurs. I do want big dinosaurs."
That's
So
super fun. Yeah.
that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as you have older kids, you develop more traditions, and
Hmm.
that's perfectly okay. I know lots of people when they have very young kids, it's just like they just don't really appreciate it a lot of times. Like
Hmm.
they don't really get into it, and so it's not a way to spend your time necessarily. But as your
Right.
kids get older, at least ours have really appreciated so much of it, and it's just fun to
Hmm.
watch their eyes light up over and over again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm hopeful that next year when he's 3.5, we'll be able to do a little bit more of that. And hopefully at that time we'll have a second baby. And so that will be something fun to, give him special that will be just for him at that time. So I can't wait to hear more of your traditions too,
Yeah,
to steal.
fun. Okay, so I thought we would start out this podcast. I wanted to just cover a couple of frequently asked questions because I'm going to be talking about home birth in this episode, and you might be a person who knows a lot about home birth if you're a listener, and you might be a person who doesn't really know anything about it. You might be someone who thinks it's wild and someone who thinks it's like totally chill and no big deal at all. So that's why I wanted to start out with just a couple of questions that I think people might have before we dive in, and that way you can get a little bit of understanding of maybe where I came from when I made some of these decisions for our family. So the first is home safe? And I always like to follow that question up with, is hospital birth safe? Because we know that mammals tend to birth really, really well. They feel super safe when it's quiet, when it's dark. And typically, as long as the process is undisturbed and not interrupted, babies just come out. And so that is something that I was thinking about a lot, had on my mind a lot when I was making this decision. It's something I've experienced myself. And the other thing about home birth, to get a little less, I guess, tacky with my response to that question, is most of the time, as long as you have a fully natural, undisturbed birth process that's taking place in a home setting or something comparable, you are going to have not a lot of emergencies. That's very, very rare unless there has been some sort of intervention in place. Like when I talked about Fox's birth, having that water broken, having Pitocin, having some other drug administered via an IV, having an epidural. As long as you don't have any of these interventions, anything that comes up, what we call red flags, are going to be something that like you're like, oh, that's different. That is something that's not necessarily something we would see during a home birth, during a fully natural childbirth. So that's something we need to pay attention to and something that we need to think about. And so if you have these red flags lining up and you're like, oh, this red flag, that's when you're like, maybe this is a medical situation where we're needing a little bit more support from the medical system. And so at that point, you as the mom, you get to decide, along with your team, whoever you decide to invite to your birth, do we want to go and get a little bit of extra help? Do we want to go and get more information? Do we feel like we need that consistent heart monitoring? Do we need an ultrasound? Do we need some information that help us to decide what to do next? Or like prolonged labor? There's lots of situations where you might have red flags, and at that point, that's how you decide, like, is this safe? As long as things are going steadily, as long as things, you can feel your baby moving, there's lots of different things that will indicate to you, like, things are great. I'm checking in. I'm tuned into my body and I feel like things are fine. Typically they are. Obviously that's not all the time. It's not guaranteed. Childbirth is never guaranteed no matter what setting you're in. So, that was kind of the guiding I used in thinking about, is this choice safe for me, my baby, and my family? Other question I get asked a lot is, how do you handle the cost of having a home birth? Because a lot of times, especially in Iowa, you are paying for it out of pocket. And so that was a significant question for our family. Like, can we actually afford to birth at home? And for me, not affording to not birth at home was not an option, because my only option was, because of the VBAC ban that lots of rural hospitals have, I would have to travel literally over an hour away in order to go to a birth center or medical center in order to have a baby vaginally. And so that cost right there of having to actually travel while I'm in labor was not one that I was willing to take on. But when you talk about actual financial cost, the cost of our birth, I think, was around $2,800. And I'll be totally honest, we saved a tax return and we planned ahead, and we knew that we were planning to have that cost incorporated into that year's finances, and we made that work. So if you kind of think ahead, I know that's not obviously an option for everyone, but pretty much every midwife that I have ever met will work with you in some way, whether that is bartering, whether it is doing a payment plan. Like, most of them are very open to helping you access the options that you're interested in, because they care about your birth. A lot of times,
as I navigate what I would want to do in the future. But what are the costs associated? So the midwife, what else is that, like the after, like prenatal care that's not in like a traditional setting? What is that included in that?
Yeah, so every midwife and birth support team will have different packages that they offer. Most likely, the package that I purchased included prenatal care, the actual birth itself, and then postnatal care. So she came over a few times to check on baby. So we also planned to have a doula for Twila's birth. We ended up not having a doula, but that would have been an additional cost if we would have sought out her services. And then beyond that, there was a kit that I purchased off the internet. My midwife was like, this is the kit that you need to purchase. This is the home birth kit that we use that comes with the Chucks pads, the umbilical clamp, all the different little tools you might need, some different tinctures and things like that, herbal tinctures. So we also purchased that. I think that was around $110. And just, all of these things have gone up. I had Twyla 5 years ago, so inflation has done its thing. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, I would say, so then on the flip side, we'll talk about Evie's birth on a later podcast, but for her birth, there was literally no costs. We didn't have anyone, so I did buy some supplies. I didn't even buy the full list of supplies from our midwife from the second birth. So a home birth can cost as much as you want to pay.
Makes sense.
Or as little as you want to pay.
I think I'll probably pop in with questions throughout the story. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So, but that was a good primer.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to, a little ahead of the story because I feel like I had just wrapped up Fox's birth and I was at a point, probably one of the lowest points in my life when I started thinking about having Twila. I knew I really wanted to have a sibling. I wanted him to have a sibling soon. I could sense her presence, like I've mentioned on other podcasts. She was such a bright presence in my life, someone I knew wanted to be here, someone that I wanted to connect with. I had also just had a miscarriage, so I waited 3 months after having the miscarriage to become pregnant with Twila, and by the grace of God, everything worked out just kind of as planned. But during those months up to from Fox's birth to becoming pregnant with Twila, it was an extreme overhaul in terms of me leaning into becoming the person that I wanted to be. It was the first time in my life where I was truly willing to say, I think that that's important for me. I need to do it and then follow through. So there had been plenty of times in my life where I'm like, oh, like I should exercise more, or I should do this thing, or I should do more squats. And then just been like, done it for a day or two. Like we all have those things where we're like, oh, I'm going to develop this new habit and then change your mind. Because of the way things had gone with Fox, I was bound and determined to write a different story this time. I was ready to say, I think that prenatal yoga to get my baby in a good position for childbirth would be essential for this birth. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it every 48 hours from week 36 to I ended up having her at 38 weeks. It was the first time in my life where I was really like, okay, my C-section scar, like I feel like I need to really work out that tissue. I need to sort of have faith in my body that I'm not going to have some sort of tear there when I give birth. So using that belly oil to massage it. It was all of these other little things where it was like, I feel like I need to do that and I'm going to actually do that. So that's really truly been a finding story in my life of being able to develop the discipline to do what I wanted to do. And so that I feel like is a great gift that Twila has given me in coming to this earth to be here with our family. So one other thing I did kind of in preparation for her birth or in preparation for becoming pregnant with her, is I got a Mayan abdominal massage. And I like to mention that because not a lot of people know about it. So that was actually a massage that I got specific to the uterus, where they're kind of the massage therapist I have kind of talks about like waking up that area after it's been kind of asleep for a while, especially after having breastfed Fox for a couple of years. So that was a really meaningful experience. It was a really beautiful experience, and I feel like it was actually really helpful. Another thing I did kind of in preparation for having Twila was I knew that during Fox's birth, one of my biggest hangups was that I was afraid of the pain of childbirth. I was not really able to, being the person that I was, hold that pain and work through it in an effective way that allowed me to birth my baby. So I read the book, Childbirth Without Fear. It's a great read. I would highly recommend it. And it talks about how pain is something that exists no matter what, something that's part of life. But if you don't give it power, then it can't control you and it can't control your decisions and your actions. So throughout my entire pregnancy, I would have like leg cramps and things like that. And I would actually learn to, in my brain, say, yes, it hurts, but are you letting it have power? Are you power over you? Are you panicking? Are you freaking out because of this? And then slowing things down so that I could actually breathe through it. And every time I stubbed my toe, every time there was any kind of instance where I was like, I'm going to have to endure pain, I'm going to use this as a practice. Because, like in previous things, like before Fox, we had done the ice exercise where you hold ice in your hand and it's uncomfortable and you breathe through it. To me, that just like wasn't really close enough to real life. Like I knew I could drop the ice at any time. Like it just didn't really seem like it is a great tool, and I'm not like don't do that exercise or anything like that. But for me, I needed it to really be much more of a legitimate situation that I was actually having to work through. So I did that as much as I could, and I also just did like squats every day, uh, all kinds of things in order to prepare for her birth. So that was a huge hallmark in terms of, I'm going to have a home birth. I am prepared to do this. And in order to truly be open to the idea of releasing my baby at home, I had to have the faith and I had to have the trust in my body that I was going to be able to do that. And so I think doing all of these little actions over and over again led me to the point where I'm like, okay, I trust myself to say, I'm going to do this, and then to actually follow through. And then one thing that my sister wanted me to share, and this will probably come up a couple of times, was I mentioned a lot like this idea of following my heart and listening in, and she thought I should give some examples of that. And so I'll try to give some examples of that as I actually tell the story, but just to give one example, so previously, like I mentioned, had him and just could not wait to hear Twila's heartbeat. Like I was hanging on that. I wanted to hear her heartbeat so bad, and I needed to hear it in order to have faith that and hope that things were going to work out differently this time for this pregnancy. And so would truly just like listen to my body, listen to my baby. Do I think that she is alive and well? And I would get the answer back, yes. And so once I did finally hear her heartbeat, I was super, super grateful. But there were just so many opportunities where I truly just tune in and follow my heart and believe everything was going to be okay in order to get through the grief of that previous experience and how challenging it had been for me. So lots of opportunities to talk to my baby and things like that. And then I think that's all the pre stuff. I can kind of dive into the actual story of her birth. Are there March? So I took my 38-week belly pick, went to work that Friday, and I actually thought, man, I don't know, it seems like she might come sooner than I anticipated, but I wasn't 100% sure. So then the next morning, I woke up, I took a bath, I listened to a really beautiful podcast by Indie Birth. Erin Green talked about her 38-week mark with the pregnancy she had previously been going through. And I was like, oh, I so relate to so many of these things, like feeling like you're between worlds, feeling like you're in that space of in between, wanting to meet your baby, but not being quite there yet. And was like, I gotta tell Zach, like, I have got to go into work and I've got to finish up the reports I'm working on because I just feel like that's the right thing to do. So I called Zach, told him, and he's like, okay, go do that. And then let's meet in Decorah because I had a couple of things I wanted to buy before the next day. So Went into work, wrapped everything up pretty much, and then met Zach in Decorah. And there were two things on my birth list that I hadn't purchased yet, birth supply list. One was towels, because you have to have a lot of towels because that's kind of a mess, can be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was Chuck's pads. I have either of those things yet. So Zach and I went and got a giant bag of towels. We got the Chuck's pads, and then we had a tax appointment, which I had been nervous about. So we did the tax appointment, and then we went over to my mother-in-law's house. And when we walked in, Fox was like patting a little baby like a doll. And she's like, look, he's practicing. He's so ready. And I was like, yes, I know it. We went home and we snuggled up, and I noticed something. I noticed a tinge that hadn't been there before. And I was like, I need to rest. And so we turned on Ninja Turtles. That was Fox's favorite thing for like 5 or 6, maybe even 7 full years. And we turned on, and I was like, these coming, these waves are coming. But I wasn't at the point where I was really going to tell anybody yet. I was like, I noticed they're consistent, and I think it might be something. So then I went to bed that night. We all went to bed. And I woke up right around 12 a.m. and was like, yep, I think this is it. So I did what all of the modern day women do. I pulled out my app, and I was like measuring the length of contractions. And it's funny because if you haven't really used one of these apps a lot before, you have no idea that all of a sudden it's going to flash, go to the hospital. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to tell my sister. So I told my sister, and she's like, what, do you think this is real? And I sent her the screenshot of the app. She was excited, and I was like, I don't think you need to come yet. Fox's birth was really long. We're planning for a long birth. That's the mindset I needed to have in order to rationalize that this would maybe go on for a little while. So got up, cleaned up my house a little bit. I ate some banana bread, and then I did the thing that really weird people like me do. I turned on an advanced age romance on Netflix, and I watched that as I labored by myself with my heat pad. And then morning came around, and I noticed some bleeding that wasn't something I was expecting at all. So I called the midwife, and her assistant came over. It was maybe 5 or 6 a.m. And they kind of took a look. They listened to baby, and they're like, well, you have a couple of choices. They're like, it could be, it could be a concern. It could just be because your body's opening. Like, this isn't outside the range of normal. It's like not a lot of blood by any means. And it makes sense that when your body's opening, you're going to release some stuff. So I was like, okay, I need to think about it at that point, because my labor had been interrupted by the welcoming of professionals. My contractions completely tapered off, like they were gone. And so I asked the midwife and her assistant to please leave our home so that my contractions could start up again. And I needed to think. I needed to think about the information that they shared with me, because the decision I had to make was really heavy. If I went to the hospital, I would have a C-section. That would be the only option. And that was a huge bummer to me. So I decided to take a shower. They left. I knew my sister was on her way, so I was super grateful for that. Fox was so excited. He was in the living room just running in circles, baby, 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 like little dolls. He couldn't wait. And then I got out of bed, and this is the thing I also did during my miscarriage, when I was like, okay, like it's time to start opening up. It's time to start releasing. I listened to a heart opening meditation on a little app, and I laid down and I took a nap, and I told Zach, when I woke up from my nap, when my sister was there, we're all going to go out to breakfast and just kind of like work things out a little bit. You know how you see people on Instagram, they like go to Target and walk around for a while because their labor just started and it might be a really long time. So took my little nap, fell asleep for a few minutes, woke up to like that flash of my membranes rupturing, my waters released, and that was the first time I had ever experienced that naturally. So it was, you're like, wow, you mentioned this in your story, like when you know, that was such a crazy and cool feeling. So went into the bathroom, called for Zach, went out, and I started just kind of like bouncing on the birth ball, and I texted my midwife and was like, hey, my water's released. I think you might want to think about coming back sometime soon. Oh, and also something that I don't want to forget is that this was the day that my baby, who was our miscarriage baby, had been born. So we were
Mm.
potentially going to have our baby on the same day, and they're going to share a birthday. So that was like really on my heart as this whole thing is like unraveling.
Wow.
So at this point, I think it's around 9 a.m. And Zach is setting up the birth pool. My waters had just ruptured. My sister's on her way, but not there yet. And I was like, thought back to that old wisdom from my grandma, like, okay, things might start to get intense here. And they did. Like, all of a sudden, bam, like the contractions are coming. They are strong. I have to get down to breathe through them, but I am so ready for them, welcoming them because we're here and we're doing this thing. So I was like, Zach, stop blowing up that birth pool. I will take a bath in our bathtub. We have a great bathtub, plenty big enough. I am not waiting for that, and I am much more concerned about making sure we have lunch. So I want you to please go out and smoke a pork loin, or I think it was like pulled pork. And I want you to focus on making lunch and supporting me, and I want you to throw the birth pool plans out. So once the midwives got there, they actually, I think, did blow up the birth pool because Fox played in it for most of the birth and then for the immediate postpartum after, which was really cute. But I got in the bath, and then I started just kind of doing this rotation where I would labor in the bathtub to get a break because my contractions would drastically slow down when I would get in the bath. Then I would go to the bed, I'd labor there for a while, and go to the living room and labor in front of the couch, and I would just sort of rotate around. And it did progressively get kind of more challenging and more difficult. And my sister got there at some point before the baby was born, so I realized she was like, well, Emmy, have you like called Brenda? And I'm like, no, I texted her. And she's like, well, you have to call Brenda because Brenda sometimes like goes to sleep, and you have to like call her to actually wake her up. So Lauren, I think, called Brenda. That's the midwife. And Brenda was like, oh gosh, okay, she's going to come back. So I think I to these things, and especially with home birth, they'll say like, what if like there will be a lot of instances where the midwife misses the birth, and a lot of times in the birth community that I'm in, we'll say things like, maybe they weren't really meant to be there then. I love that I care for so much because I was not fully in my power yet. I was a person who was healing from a lot of very difficult experiences, who had had drastic personality shift, and I needed that like maternal, wise support there by my side in order to step into this new person that I was stepping into. So, again, kind of going through this rotation of going to these different places and laboring, settled in the living room and thought to myself, like, I think it's been around like 10 hours at this point, maybe 11 hours, and I might have 20 more. Like, I might have 10 more to go. Who knows? Like, I am getting tired. That makes me nervous. I am concerned by this because this is getting really hard. And so I'm kneeling by the couch, and Fox is in the background and he's jumping around, being silly. My sister is there. She has the phone. We're making sure to record and take tons of pictures. I hear the midwife come through our back basement door and around, and I can hear her having like a little conversation with my sister. And I overhear her being like, Emmy's gonna have that baby soon. Like, this baby's coming. Like, the noises she is making, those are the primal noises of a woman about to release a baby onto this earth. And so here's me thinking, like, maybe I have 10 more hours. And here's the midwife being like, yeah, the baby is like basically here. So I am there. I am honestly, because I'm like, okay, like I might actually do this thing I really wanted to do. Like, I might actually birth this baby right here, right now. Legs are shaking. My body is just like, I don't, have you attended very many births besides your own? There's like a
No.
vortex, like an energy shift of like magic that overcomes a space, I think, when a baby is about to be welcomed. And so
Mhm.
my midwife knelt down next to me, and I looked at her and I said, Brenda, I don't think I can do this. I'm too
Mm.
scared. And she said, "It's okay, Emmy. You don't have to do it. Your body will do it for you." So shortly after that, she said, would you like to kind of look and see, kind of give you some information about where your baby might be?" And she said, she kind of peeked around and she was like, "Will it help you to know that your baby will be here any second?" And so at that point, I think I sort of was like, okay, my baby's coming. I kind of like understand how to bring this baby down a little bit. And um I was kneeling, head came out, and I could feel it with my hand, and then just sort of like pushed the rest of the baby out. I don't remember a lot of the sensations or feelings at that point. Like I feel like I was just in such a place of bliss and ecstasy
Mm-hmm.
and excitement. And I've shared on other podcasts that she just like fell to the ground. Like I looked at her and I grabbed her and I picked her up, and I was just so excited to meet her and so excited to have our whole family there to witness the new person, to have everyone like be integrated into this moment together. Like we're all here, we're all in this place, and we're all just like so excited to be together. Like we have, I just felt like Twyla had been like on the cusp of like being part of our family for such a long time, and she was finally there. So if you haven't listened to other podcasts, I also share the story of how I thought it would be a girl and I didn't have my glasses on when I gave birth to her, and I looked down and I was like, "Oh, I think it's a girl," and I was right. And so I leaned back on our chair and I just, we just for a little bit, or Twyla on my chest, we put a blanket or a towel over her, and everything was great. She nursed for a little bit. After a little while, I kind of propped up on the squatty potty that we have, and I released my placenta. I just had one little push and it came out. Then the really wonderful thing about having home birth midwives is that they prepare a meal for you. At least this was my situation. They prepared sitz bath herbs, so I was able to go and take a little bath, get cleaned up, get all tucked and snugged into our bed. We did the newborn exam after that, so we weighed her, we measured her, all in perfect timing, all when our family felt ready, which was so, just cozy and wonderful. And everybody's
Mm-hmm.
smiles are just like a mile
Mm-hmm.
high. So excited
Mm-hmm.
to all be there. And just lots of like fun pictures. And then I think one of the most fun things is about how everything had gone fast and we kept our group small, is that no one knew I was in labor at all. I had
Mm-hmm.
requested specifically that no one find out that I was in labor because
Mm-hmm.
that had been kind of a challenging thing the previous time.
Mm-hmm.
And so just getting to FaceTime each of our family members and be like,
Mm-hmm.
"There's a baby here now."
Oh my
Meet
gosh.
Twyla, meet Twyla Astrid Kissinger. We were so excited. And yeah, just so special, all of it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to share about her birth. It was just such an incredible experience to welcome her in such a peaceful, calm, loving environment, to know that everything had gone exactly how it was meant to, and had to have just such peace and contentment surrounding the whole experience. Her postpartum was good. My sister stayed for about a week, and Zach put out little bird feeders all around the outside of our house so I could just sit and watch the birds and snuggle my baby. And Fox fell in love. I have so many pictures of them from that time and little videos and cute things. And yeah, just such a blissful and divine experience. So grateful for everything I learned and all of the wisdom I take with me from that.
Wow. It's just so cool to have just recently listened to your birth story with Fox and to see the 180 that not only the experience was, but in the person that you became. Not that you weren't strong and had your will into before, but just how heightened it became through your motherhood experience is just so powerful. And to see you harness that power is inspiring to say the least. Um, I have to imagine that having that birth and having harnessed that power had to have made the postpartum better in itself, right? Like it sounds like it was a good postpartum. Do you think that the birth had something to do with that?
Oh, I definitely know that it did. Well, just on a purely physical level, like recovering from home birth is typically a very seamless process. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of the women you talk to, because there was no intervention, because their baby just came out and their body just went back into the way that it was supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
you're up year round, doing things isn't hard. There was no cutting, there was no episiotomy, there was going to make the recovery challenging on a physical level. And then I think on an emotional level, what was kind of interesting was that I had birth along with the school year, so I knew I would have a really lovely leave from work. I had 20 weeks off, and that was a really such a beautiful time because I truly did not have any work to do during that time. That was so essential for our bonding that we needed to have, her and I. But as I neared the end of that leave, I found myself exactly where I had been before, panicking
Mm.
about going back to work, panicking about leaving her, completely distraught to the point where I made Zach shift his work schedule so that he would work second shift, which was not the thing our family needed or wanted. But like, I was just so fearful of being away from her. My mental health was in truly a terrible spot as I sort of
Mm.
had to make this shift. But the good thing was, because I was truly a transformed person who had just gone through all of this, I was like, okay, I know things are hard, but I don't have to sit in this.
Mm.
So I started working with, that was the first time I went to therapy, and we talked about this idea of an adjustment disorder. Like, I could literally not get on board
Mm.
with the trajectory of my life at this point. Like,
Mm.
I wanted it to look different. I needed it to look different. I wanted
Mm.
to be with my baby at least during that first year. I did not want to be away
Mm.
from her. I wanted to feed her. I didn't want to pump. I mean, I don't have anything wrong with pumping. I think it's a beautiful experience and I love it. And I did it for, I don't know, consecutive, I mean, at least 2 full years of pumping between Twila and Fox at work.
Mhm.
But I wanted to be with my baby. And so I was willing to do the therapy. I was willing to wake up early in the morning to start my business so that I knew I would never have to go through that experience again. I was no longer willing to just take kind of the situation I had been dealt and suffer through it. I was at a point where I was like, I know I can do big things. I know I can do brave things, and I'm willing to jump in and try.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, they can see how much of the birth led to that mindset. That's incredible. I feel like we live in a society where so much of the time the things that we try to do are thwarted or are we're set up with unrealistic expectations for a lot of things. And having worked in fitness for so long, this is where I see that a lot. It's like people think they can't be successful in fitness because of all of the things they've tried and have failed at. But those things that they were trying were meant for them to fail. And so we have this like, I can't do I can't do these things because I've never been able to in the past. And then once you do something like you did, once you prove to yourself you can, so much of the world opens up. And that's coming from a place of privilege for me where I have the resources to do that. But this little thing for me was competing. When I competed in my fitness competition, it was like, oh, wow, that was really hard. And it took every single day me making hard decisions over and over and over and over. And then I did it. And then okay, so I can do hard things. I can do those little hard things. And it completely transforms the way you view yourself in your life. And it's so clear to see that connection for you. If you did that incredibly hard thing, you had the discipline leading up to it that you mentioned, and then you've been able to create the life that you have now that is so aligned with who you want it to be, which is incredible.
Yes, it just seems like so much magic. And that doesn't mean that like there's not still a lot of stressors in my life, a lot of challenges, a lot of things to overcome. There's always all those things, but definitely the confidence that I gained as a person and the empowerment is just there's just
And there's
in
a
terms
difference
of kind of
between
becoming a woman.
Yeah. And there's a difference between the stressors and the anxieties that you have when you're in a situation that you feel powerless in and that is not aligned with who you are, and the stressors that you have that go along with doing something that you feel aligned with. Like I just had that feeling the other night where I was like, "Oh my god, I don't want to stay up for an hour and work on all this stuff. I want to go to bed, but I love what I'm doing, and so I will do this. Still not happy about it. I still would rather be sleeping, but it's different than if I was at my old job that I hated and that, I was taking me away from Teddy all the time. And I would have had to stay up to do extra work from that. Oh boy, I would have been sobbing. I would have been so upset. But like it's been problems, right? Like you're always gonna have problems in your life. So like, can you have better problems? That's the
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
the thing.
Yes,
That's
for
so
sure.
cool. And like I just I so much in the like even when you have that extra time and you had such a wonderful maternity leave, like a longer maternity leave, peaceful maternity leave got you what you needed out of it, it not being enough. I one of my things I regretted saying, sorry if you can hear my husband making
I can't.
slamming the microwave. Doesn't know his own strength. Seriously. Um, but one of the things I regretted saying so much was talking to someone once and they were telling me that they got 4 months of maternity leave. They weren't even pregnant yet, but they were like, I got this new job and I get 4 months of maternity leave when I have a baby. It's going to be awesome. And I was like, it's not enough. And that was the first thing I said. I was like, that's nothing, is what I said. And it was such a like, oh, just wait statement to me. But I was like, oh, it's nothing. And especially like at 4 months is when they start to come alive. And it's like, and then that person had a baby and they went through that and they were like, understand what you were saying. And I was like, I have felt so bad for saying that because I didn't want to scare you and feel like that wasn't, because that is more than most people get. And it is a blessing and it is something to be grateful for. But like, it unfortunately in our society that is true of like it's something to be grateful for. You get more than the standard 8 to 12 weeks, but it's not enough. Like
Oh
I had
yeah.
Teddy with me for 7 months and it still wasn't enough. And that was a choice that I made to be able to have more time. And he only went to daycare mornings, like 3 days a week or something like that. Like it was hardly anything at all. But even now I'm like, next time, nope. Like it's not enough. It's just not enough. So I just feel
Yeah.
for you in
And
that.
that's true for maternal mental health, it's true for infant mental health, it's true for maternal physical health, and it's true for infant physical health. All of these things are all wrapped up in this huge shift that we truly need to make in terms of infant and maternal health in general. I mean, I work with a lot of companies. A lot of those companies are in Canada just as a freelancer, and they're doing like the full year with the option of 36 weeks where you can for sure come back to your job that first year paid. Like there are huge shift that needs to be made, and you might disagree with those statements that we're making, but it's just a reality. Like moms
It
and
is.
babies are meant to be together. A lot of cultures use the term mama baby because you
Mm-hmm.
are one unit. Your infant
Mm-hmm.
literally does not see themselves. There's like a another caregiver the baby has
Mm-hmm.
also attached to, and that's oftentimes the case. But I mean, we just hear about so much in terms of rampant ear infections, RSV. I mean, those are things that I went through myself with Fox because he went to daycare all day, every day, away from his mother, and he cried, and it was so hard,
Mm-hmm.
and I just wasn't willing to do it again.
Yeah. I don't blame you. And I first just said mom and baby are meant to be together. That's not to say that you're not going to want alone time and can take
Yeah,
alone time and deserve alone time in that first year or first
definitely.
weeks or anything. Like you do need still, while you are a unit, you are still an individual, which is one of the hardest transitions to make in matrescence is how am I still an individual when I am a dyad, when I am, I am two, but I am still one. That is such a hard thing to wrap your mind around. But to honor that is really important to say, I am still one. Right now, my primary focus is the mother mind and being this unit, but I need to take that time, even if it's 5-10 minutes, to be that individual that can really be healing. And the second thing is with that maternity leave, I genuinely think businesses would be better off if moms had that time because when you come back before you're ready, you do not perform. You have the resentment. It is not a healthy environment. And yet we still send women back to their same desks in different bodies and different minds. And it's before they're ready. And it's really a
Sometimes even before
travesty.
they're physically ready. Like
Oh,
women
yeah.
are still bleeding when they're going
Mhm.
back to work. Like that's just wild. But I read about something really, really cool the other day, which I think was a neat thing. And it's called a um, in the know program, where some companies now are shifting to this model where the woman is gone for an extended period of time, but the plan is that she will come back. And so they're having monthly or quarterly meetings to help her stay up to date, like specifically in the professional world of like, oh, these are the legal things that change. These are the paperwork things that change. These are some of the things you might need to know when you come back to help bridge that gap where they're like staying connected, they're staying in the know, but they're still able to be home and provide the childcare that they want to provide for their their infant or their children. So there is progress being made. It's minuscule. It's really small.
I love that. I love that. That is a step in the right direction. And I can't tell you how many times when I talk about matrescence, people tell me like, you need to get into corporations and you need to get into businesses and teach them about this and how to support women through that transition. And for me, I don't know enough about the corporate setting to know how do you do that at this point, but it's something that comes up a lot because I think so many people have felt so unsupported in that transition. So, just a whole side tangent there on aftercare, but what a birth.
It's one of the greatest triumphs of my life. I'll say that for sure. It's still a story I think of often.
Beautiful. Well, we will, I don't know what's coming up next week, but we'll be back with another episode next week. For everything we talked about in this podcast, you can find that all linked down below, our social medias and the Mamas event, everything else we have going on, our websites, all of that. Thank you so much for listening. As always, if you could leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, that means the world to us. Any review you write on Apple helps. We're also on YouTube if you haven't found us over there yet, where you can see us and you can comment and all of that. And I think that's it for us this week. We will see you next week.
Hello and welcome to the Becoming Mama podcast. We're two long lost friends. I better start over already.
Discuss cod. The codcast.
It would be hilarious if we called it an oddcast. People wouldn't be surprised.
I thought you said codcast, and now I'm thinking of like the missed opportunity of fishermen having a codcast.
Okay, somebody needs to tell them. Okay.
Oh, okay. You got this.